So we're doing a podcast, Patrick.
We are, Tim. We've been talking about this for a while, but we're actually doing a podcast and joining the thousands upon thousands of other podcasts out there that maybe someone listens to.
It's true.
They all started somewhere.
They all did. And we started with something where we have like rich, fertile soil. Really, really
Yes.
awful episodes of Star Trek. Maybe not awful.
There are a lot. Oh.
Maybe not like a lot of awful, like just poorly produced, but just like you watch them and it's Mystery Science Theater 3000, but in Star Trek clothes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, some of them actually are terribly produced, especially Voyager. We'll get to that. But it's Star Trek has a ton of great classic episodes. You know, there's like in every single one of the series, I would say, including Enterprise. Voyager's got some really good episodes here and there. Deep Space Nine a ton, Next Generation a ton. The original series has got I think has the best episodes of any Star Trek, but it's also got some of the worst. And Star Trek, there's just so much of it, and so much of it is bad, you know, and bad in a way that you're like, what were they thinking? I mean, you guys produced this episode one week and this episode the next. It's like, I mean, I know that, worlds apart, and there are some very bad episodes in like grown MST3K worthy, like, what were you doing episodes in every season of a Star Trek and every series of Star Trek. So Tim and I, we are bringing you Bad Trek.
The best of Bad Trek. And we are
the best of Bad Trek.
With our agreed upon favorite episode to call the worst, Spock's Brain.
Spock's Brain. Brain. What is brain?
He's lost his brains, Jim. Okay, to start the podcast, first want to thank Captain Meatshield for providing our intro music. And quite frankly, once we heard that, we both kind of fell in love with it. And we're like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's our song.
Yeah, it's really good. And Captain Meatshield, well, we salute you.
And we will connect to you on YouTube and on Twitter so that everybody
Twitter once we get that up, yeah.
Feed. Yeah.
Yes.
You got to give credit where credit is due for really good
music. Yeah, and that's, you know, it's the beginning of a good podcast. You need something. You need a hook, and I think I got a good one.
Walking straight
so anyway,
talking is always not a great
idea. Let's get into it. So I think we want to talk about a bit about why we're doing this, though.
Yeah.
Like, why there are a lot of podcasts out there, and, you know, why toss another one onto the fire? And, you know, is it just because we want to talk about Star Trek? Yes.
Yeah.
Because Tim and I, we share a lot of common interests, but I think the one that is the most common is Star Trek. I think that's what you and I bonded a bit over when we first met was Star Trek. You had the little Star Trek, the Abrams Prize model in your office,
and then
and
then I eventually ordered the Excelsior, but accidentally got
two
right, and gave the other one to you.
And I'm looking at it right now. It's right above my desk. It's a handsome ship. So you and I, we were talking about what kind of a podcast you want to do, and we said, Star Trek.
Yeah.
But what hasn't been done on Star Trek, and, you know, bad Star Trek. Because, you know, everyone's talking about, what does this mean? There's some really good podcasts about Star Trek. I mean, there's like the main one that I think Paramount runs, or whoever owns Engage, I think is the podcast. It's pretty good. They get obviously they get like stars on, they do deep dives, but people talk about the philosophy of Star Trek. They talk about people who are going through every single episode. But no one really gets into what I think is, you know, it's not unique to science fiction, because every science fiction series I've ever seen has some really terrible stories. In fact, science fiction is a genre, sort of suffers from like fantastic, some of the best things you'll ever hear, and then some of the worst god-awful ideas that have ever been put pen to paper.
And then sometimes you not only get like when sci-fi will get so far up its own asshole as far as philosophy goes, but
Yeah.
then like they'll give you this grandiose speech that's delivered almost as dry as possible, and with a nice layer on top of really crappy production values. So like, I mean, in Star Trek, it was always like there was the future door thing where there was always like one little triangle or diamond on the side to like show you that's a future door.
It's the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have like series like Babylon 5 where it's like it's a really cool show, it's a really cool concept, and then somehow it's like you just get like brain dead episodes where all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's a lost deck in the middle of the station and now it's turned into a detective noir novel, and you're like, what? Like sometimes things just don't
it's
make
like
sense.
I think the problem is that sometimes the writers decide that they really want to do something.
Yeah.
And so they shove it into an existing continuity where it makes no sense. It's like the Tom Paris holodeck episodes on Voyager, which we'll get to a bit, like not in this episode, but down the line. It's like, oh, let's like Tom Paris really likes the holodeck, and we're gonna do something about that. And
But let's go ahead and put him in a 1930s radio serial that no one actually wants to watch or experience. Or you'll have like the writers be like, we need to send an environmentalist message. And then you get like Force of Nature, and you're like, holy shit, this is profoundly boring.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, people are going to die. Well, we're out of here. Sorry, Warp 5 out of here. I mean, the other thing is that, like, the two of us both worked in D.C. for a long time, and we're both political junkies. And we wanted to do this podcast as, like, our form of therapy, of, like, talking about something that we enjoy and has, like, the positive message of a future utopia for humanity, but at the same time, like, really focus on the humor because, God damn it, we need a reason to laugh.
Right, yeah. No, the political world is a dark and terrible place where we'll be lucky if we get through all of our episodes. No, but yeah, the vision of Star Trek and why it's appealing and why I got into Star Trek. Actually, it was my mother. My mother was a big Star Trek fan. Grew up on the show, so I grew up on the show. You know, I went to conventions when I was a kid. I met I think I saw most of the original cast. The only two I never saw in person from the original cast were Sulu or Chekhov. I never met Walter Koenig or George Takei, but all the other guys, the main ones, you know, even saw Shatner and Nimoy together after I guess they buried their hatchet. And it was actually wildly entertaining. These are guys who like each other, and Shatner, I know, was always hard for people to like because he's Shatner. But it was a show that my mother likes it. You're young, you like people watch it. But why did I keep watching it? Just because it's good, but also because it does tell stories that are really universal. Yeah. It does it in a really fun way. You want to imagine a future where humanity's conquered the stars. I mean, there's mystery and danger, and we're still screwing things up, but we're trying, and our adventurous spirit. Obviously, the 60s, this tracks really well, as, 16, with the moonshot.
Yeah, and the world was changing.
But I mean, Star Trek put a Russian on,
It's true.
Had
a black woman in a senior position.
Black woman in a senior position. And they weren't. And they made Chekhov kind of the comic relief, but and actually, he wasn't added because of Russian. He was added because of the monkeys factor. That's why he's got that hair. They want to look like Davy Jones.
That explains.
But Star Trek, was willing to try things and employed a great number of very good writers, very good science fiction writers, and really, it was filming science fiction in a way that never been done before. I remember I was reading, I think there was a book, there's been so many books about Star Trek, but there was one that I had when I was a kid called the Star Trek Compendium, and it was the original series, every single episode kind of laid out, and it went to the movies too, but it was like, here's what's happening in this episode, here's a little bit of background, here's some behind the scenes photos, it was put out by the official the Star Trek imprint. But the compendium, there was the intro from the guy who wrote it. He was talking about he had gone to like a science fiction, like a proto convention in like the mid '60s, and they showed the pilot. They showed the second pilot where no man has gone before, and he said, this was at the time when science fiction was very much considered kid stuff, and Star Trek comes on and they're showing a very serious, it's a serious episode. I mean, a lot of there's like Spock it is one of his most serious the early ones, and the joke, and I think I alluded to this, and then we talked about Star Trek and kids, which we'll also get to in other episodes. But the one thing that sticks with me from what stuck with me, what he said, is like we kept waiting for like a goofy robot or a plucky kid to show up, and they never did. It was just people on a mission trying to explore, but also having like a real serious story, but also one that in the vein of science fiction is well told and not treated like it's kid stuff.
Yeah.
And Star Trek appeals to kids, obviously, but the reason it keeps appealing to you when you're an adult is because of how smart it can be.
Yeah.
And yet here we are. At least that's my Star Trek origin story. Anyway, Tim.
So for me, it was kind of similar. Like my parents always watched Star Trek, and I grew up I distinctly remember being super hyped for watching The Next Generation when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, what really sold it was actually seeing people of clearly different races and backgrounds and origins working together as a team and overcoming random wild things, but not without resorting to violence. Like a lot of the media that was available, like I remember G.I. Joe and He-Man and all of the other, and like the Power Rangers at a certain point. And it was like, that always ended with like fisticuffs. And like Star Trek, I mean, there's literally an episode where Picard goes through the nitty-gritty of an agreed-upon treaty and finds like a third-party arbitration agreement and hangs up on somebody mid-phone call and spends, and I timed it, like 45 seconds, like with that little hailing beam going off, and he like walks over and reads the Enterprise plaque because he's trying to piss them off. And like that spoke to me on a deep level. Like that level of spite, but technical spite was like, okay, like that's the kind of world that I want to live in. Where it's like that's how we settle problems.
Yeah, no, that's a really good episode. That's the one where Data destroys the. Doesn't a Data end up destroying the?
It's where they find this weird they find a
colony that disappeared off the.
Yeah, there's like this single house, and it turns out there's like this Q-like being that keeps resurrecting his wife or the spirit of his wife, and then eventually they're just like, you know what, we're just gonna leave him. We're just like we're just gonna walk away and never come back. But that episode did also feature like one of the few times where Worf wasn't the person who got physically wrecked in a physical conversation. It was Riker who got tossed like 20 feet.
Yeah.
But I mean, so we both love Star Trek from an early age, and we both like look to it as like what we really want humanity to aspire to. That like
exactly.
This is like one where it's like clearly like in Star Trek they talk about the fact like humanity had a nuclear war, somehow got their like stuff together enough to like come together and become a force for good generally in the galaxy.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain exceptions, like, which we'll touch on, like in Valiant, where all of a sudden the Federation's okay using child soldiers. But, but for right now, we're going to focus on Spock's brain. And the fact that, like, as we were talking about before we started recording, the fact that after a massive letter-writing campaign to save the show, this is the episode they started with.
That's right.
Like, they decided, we'll come back with this one where, we're going to give Jimmy Doohan some FaceTime and not really explain too well why Spock has 24 hours to live.
Yeah. Or exactly, why they, or anything really. They don't, I mean, the problem with the episode is nothing is really explained. The episode assumes you know who these people are, and that's fine. The opening it's very Star Trek. An alien vessel they don't know approaches. someone beams onto the bridge, and this happens constantly. Their shields are terrible. The ship is constantly being boarded by
by random ass people. And the thing is,
by random ass people, and that's fine.
and, it's a fun intro because you're like, well, clearly she's going to do something to Spock, but like this is a super powered alien. Like this is going to be exciting.
Right.
Like this is a real challenge for them.
Yeah.
And then like the episode takes its dear sweet time to do everything.
Right.
Until like the last 5 minutes where they're like, oh shit, we didn't write an ending. Fuck, hurry. And then they wrap it up in a neat bow. But that's
they literally wrap it up in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And
like the only thing
this was back in the 60s. They had like 52 minutes of television. Commercials wasn't like today where an average episode's like 41 minutes long in an hour.
Yeah.
They had a good 51 minutes or so. I was watching on Netflix. It's like 50 minutes of show. And the credits only take about a minute and a half between the beginning and the ending. So really, you've got 49 minutes of show.
And this episode really suffers from future door syndrome because there's like that one little diamond.
Yeah.
And like
there are a lot of future doors.
I swear that like somebody must have tripped over that at least 3 takes and just ruined it. And it might have been Jimmy Doohan because I'm pretty sure he was drunk most of that episode.
He does seem a bit, not totally with it. Like he's like, in the beginning. Scotty, is an engineer, and they decided to give him some color because he always talk. Sometimes when he's drunk, he's really entertaining. Then they've gotten him drunk on the show before.
Yeah.
But and then he was quite good. But in this case, he's on the bridge of the Enterprise. This new ship they've never seen before has these state-of-the-art engines. And Scotty is like visibly aroused. It's like, oh, look at this ship coming in. It's so pretty, isn't she? And Kirk's never really talked much about ships before, but he talks about the Enterprise. But like he and Scotty are like, oh yeah, it's great. This is a beautiful ship. And James Doohan's like, maybe it is a beautiful ship.
I want to make love to that ship.
I want to make love to that ship. But again, up until the credits run, it's fine. Somebody comes onto the ship. They beam on. They take. She knocks out the crew. This happens all the time on Star Trek. So that's. It's just you're running aliens who are all powerful. It's normal. So you're watching it. You're like, okay, this is fine. And they stole Spock's brain.
Yeah.
Now.
And like
now, and they did it in a way. This is brilliant on behalf to avoid having to use any special makeup effects. They surgically removed his brain. They say surgically, and then put his head back on with no scarring whatsoever. It was an advanced technology that no one's ever seen. Technobabble in the beginning, I suppose. This is early Technobabble.
And the nice part is they keep it simple because it's just like, we don't know what to do with this. We can't explain it. And you're like,
that's
okay,
fine too,
you can buy into that.
You can buy into it. And DeForest Kelley does a fantastic job of delivering the line, they took his brain, or so whatever it is that he says. And everybody looks really, really concerned. Everyone, like, the thing about Star Trek is almost always, when it plays, obviously it's played comedy before. Trouble with Tribbles. Everybody's playing that episode as comedy. Everybody knows it's comedy. It's comedy. This is an episode that should be played for comedy that everyone plays straight. Like, the lines are delivered with total sincerity and with a belief that, this is incredibly important information. Like, they stole his brain, we don't know how, and it's like, when such as they stole his brain, you just gotta laugh.
Yeah, and the thing is, DeForest Kelley delivers all of his lines in a way that, Vincent Price is like, damn, he is on point.
Yeah.
There is no sign of him cracking whatsoever. And, he's really cared. He's really trying. And, the other actors, I'm not so certain they were sober every episode or every day they came to set. Because there's one shot of, later in the episode where Kirk is confronting the reality of the situation. And, he's got 5 o'clock shadow. He's shot from behind, so he looks really tired. The only thing that's missing is, him with, a cup of coffee and a cigarette. And just, God damn it. God, fuck, damn it. It's just, because so much of this episode is, they put so much thought and effort into it, but somehow pieces are missing.
Yeah.
And it feels so laborious. So after DeForest Kelley goes through the whole explanation of, what explanation we do get, for the fact that Spock is suddenly on the clock for 24 hours or he's dead. That they go to the bridge and they engage in what amounts to an elaborate logic puzzle to figure out, like, which planet
where the brain went.
And they introduce like this whole like technological like classification system with letters, and it's like there is zero context for the audience about where this is coming from. And literally they have to have Chekhov, or like they have Sulu basically being like, well, that means this. It's like,
I think it was Chekhov.
It was one of the two of them.
Chekhov got a lot to do this episode. Chekhov got a lot to do this episode. Sulu got to command the Enterprise for a bit when everyone else went down to the planet.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Chekhov was explaining like where each of they track the ship to this one system, which it had a cool name. It was like
it's like Draconis something.
Draconis system. It's like, oh man, it's like it's Game of Thrones.
Yeah, like
it's like Proxima Draconis system or something. It's got a cool name. Yeah. You know, and they're going through like the 3 planets that have civilizations on them, which is pretty good. 3 planets in one system that have civilizations on it, and they're all different. You know, they're all obviously that doesn't make any sense either, considering the distance they are from.
Yeah, and one of them is like
from their sun.
At like
but
2030s level of tech. It's like they should be like going to the others and being like, dudes, have a microwave. We're out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's one there that's clearly hyped, like is like what they said, 20th century, 21st century, maybe.
Yeah, I think they said like
maybe like 100 years, 150 years behind the Federation.
Yeah, it was like one was like Victorian.
Then there's one that's like Stone Age.
Yeah, which of course is where they have to
there's
go.
One. Yeah, the Stone Age ones were, of course, the only place it could have come from is the Stone Age one. So, but then they have a different categorization for each one that they've never introduced before. Now they do say Class M. You know, and that's at least they use Class M. At least they're not that lazy. And again, the episode was written by a Trek veteran, Gene Kuhn, so at least he knows the lingo. There's a Class M planet, and so they find it, and the thing is though, before they find it, they talk about how Kirk is basically whatever mission they may have had before is gone.
Yeah,
they have to track down who stole Spock's brain. They don't know where they went. They don't know how they're going to find it, but they're not going to rest until they find Spock's brain. He's only got 24 hours, so.
And it's like it's a vendetta. Like Kirk's like, nah, man, they hurt my boy. I'm going back. I'm gonna go right to their hood.
I mean, like there are good episodes of the original series where they're under a time constraint for very serious reasons that add tension to the scene. But no, you know, it's all they've got is this weird 24 hours with Spock might die. Meanwhile, you know, when they eventually introduce Spock back as Franken-Spock, because he has no brain, because he's Franken-Spock.
He is. I mean, literally all we're missing is the Tesla coils in, like, the sick bay.
Seriously, I mean, they've got, like, futuristic Tesla coils, really, in what they put around his head.
It's true.
And he's controlled with a little clicker, or it's like a wheel or something. It's
like a whole bunch of like little buttons they could press, and then like a little dial at the top. And the thing is, like, well, so Spock now literally has a remote control.
Yeah.
And the thing is, beyond that, like, if you think about the alien's perspective, it's like, why not just take Spock's body with you and like leave it in the caves, because they're gonna notice that one of their guys is suddenly really dumb. Or just, like, not functional.
Well, I mean, they could have taken Spock. Yeah. There's no reason just to take, like, it's never explained why they just take his brain. Though I guess you can infer, because you do learn that these people are actually stupid. In fact, like 5 times, maybe not that many times, but McCoy keeps telling Kirk every time he tries to get it.
She's so simple.
She's so simple. There's so much. There's a layer of like. I guess misogyny is one way to put it, but maybe just kind of 60s attitudes towards women.
Well, there's one point where
she's got the brain of a child.
Scotty literally comes out and goes, like, "There's only women here. We're in the engineers." It's like clearly only men can be engineers and run this.
Of course, right? Yeah. Like, and of course, the men aren't much smarter either on the planet up on the surface. They're essentially cavemen.
Yeah.
Who also speak English.
And have, like, Prince Valiant's haircut.
And but they're all in skins, in bear skins, and they all speak English. They know exactly what they're talking about. They have different names for men and women. That's about it. And there's like, they don't even mention bring the universal translator, which was a great thing they came up with because hey, universal translator, yes.
Yeah, the universal translator explains why it's like random ass characters from who knows where can suddenly speak English. Like other series will be like, oh yeah, there's basic. It's like, okay, that's one thing, but I mean,
they don't even take the time in this episode to explain why. They say that the two societies had like split apart.
Yeah.
The one society, they don't really explain why the society did that once it got to a certain level of,
They start to, and the episode ends because Spock
that's right.
having his epiphany on the bed, and like they go to the freeze frame where everybody laughs, and the ship just flies off.
Yeah, Spock is, and what's interesting is that. Like, as I'm saying, the characterizations are really off on a lot of the characters in this one. I mean, Scotty's a little, Kirk's always excited about, he's really a little too into fighting Spock, he's not quite as stoic as he sometimes is.
Yeah, like he's ready to
but
cut
Spock,
somebody.
Spock in particular, once they put his brain back in, and once he's up, he's much chattier and he's like friendly and he's like really can't wait to tell these women the story about another example of a society that did a similar thing. And he's like and Spock is usually reserved, like he'll explain it, but he seems to be getting joy out of it. And I don't want to say it's like, oh, it's Spock not being Spock. No, he's like way too into telling the story. Like he's been waiting to tell it. Like it's almost like a Data in Next Generation when Data pipes in and says something you don't care about because it's totally irrelevant.
And keeps adding context
never
on top
says
of it.
stuff like yeah. So it's just, it's off. And then the thing is, in between them beaming down to the planet and then the surgery for putting Spock, it's like half an hour of the show, and nothing really happens.
At all.
Like, they get captured, and somehow...
There is one thing that happens. The rules for her device completely change. It goes from being this thing that can, like, wipe out the ship instantly to all of a sudden they have to wear giant plastic donut belts. And it's kind of like, wait a minute. How can this work at all? Because one, they didn't need the belts on the Enterprise unless there's like, unless that's part of Scotty's like girdle that he was wearing. But you're just like, all of a sudden the rules completely change. And you're like, what? How? No, you got to be consistent. Like I almost imagine that like this was like, to credit, like you said, Gene Coons created the concept of the Prime Directive, and this is the episode where like they ejected out an airlock into space.
Yeah.
And like I'll get to like my thoughts on Wrath of Khan here in a second. But it feels like this is one they slapped together when they're like, oh crap, we don't have any scripts. Or we need one more.
And they renewed us.
Yeah.
We don't have any scripts.
And she's like, well, I have this one, it's half done. And then like the director was like, don't worry about it, we'll just fill in the middle with some exposition. And just goes with it. And then literally the ending is like 5 minutes when they kind of realize, oh wait, shit, we have to actually get Spock's brain back in his head. Oh.
Yeah. And then they come up with the learning device.
Out of nowhere. I mean,
right.
It's in the back of the shot. But
they had to explain why everybody is so stupid in this underground, even though they have insanely advanced technology. It turns out that there's a device that the people who built the place left for some reason, which again never explained why, that allows them to keep running it. They also kind of cheat. They say the information disappears after a while, right? That's why she doesn't remember how she took Spock's brain out.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. But she does remember how to use her wrist device. She remembers, basically how to keep everybody under control. She remembers enough to eat and breathe and stuff like that. But otherwise, she has the mind of a child, Jim.
Well, you see, the thing is, though, they made it gold and sparkly, and women are attracted to gold and sparkly.
Oh yeah, that's
probably how they got
That's
away
right.
with
Yeah.
Because this is like a couple of episodes before Turnabout.
It's a gold bauble. She's gonna press it. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Like there's the learning device, and the learning device is a really cool concept. Actually, the idea that and it actually looks cool. And actually, I want to rotate back a bit.
Okay.
Because one thing Star Trek does really well, and it does in this episode, is reuse props or repurpose props. Yeah. The episode after So they find where Spock's brain is. We never actually see the brain, though. They could have like at least shown us a disembodied brain.
No.
I mean, it was the 1960s, but you could put it in. I don't know. It's just in this. It's in a white sphere that's glowing.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that's the body. That thing is also the cloaking device that next week they're going to steal from the Romulan ship.
That's amazing. I honestly thought that it was like they took the body from what? Nomad. Yeah. Like they took
Dick Bot.
You're probably right. Yeah, Dick Bot. Oh man, Swear Trek.
Yeah, Swear Trek. Shout out to Swear Trek.
Exactly. The thing is, it's like they introduce all of these things. There's very little explanation, and I'm a little concerned because she shows up in this ship, and then we never see or hear about it again. Like, did it land on the planet?
Oh, the ship, yeah.
It's just like, but is there like a space hangar somewhere on the planet? If there is, is somebody operating it, or is it automated?
Yeah.
And
not just that, they talk about how advanced the civilization is in their technology. It looks like the Enterprise crew just left it there. All that technology. They talk about how advanced the drive is on the ship. They talk about how they have this incredibly advanced civilization that knows how to perform brain surgery in such a way that this incredibly advanced medical technology. Because they always run. They take nothing. Yeah. Meanwhile, they violate the time directive. And basically, at the end of the episode, is Kirk saying that they're saying you'll destroy our civilization. Kirk's like, oh no, you're gonna go live with the men, as you said, barefoot and pregnant, and we're gonna teach you how to do it. But we're not gonna take any of this. We're just gonna leave all these amazing, state of the art things down here at the bottom of the planet, and let them rot because reasons. Yeah, that's essentially it.
And the thing is, it's why didn't they just steal a brain from one of the men? Even if it burned out or wasn't as effective.
Well, the implication is that Spock's so advanced that only his brain can keep everything running.
There's got to be a Vulcan vegetable in a hospital somewhere. They couldn't just go and find that. Kirk's like, nah, man, you hurt my boy.
Your civilization's done.
You're going down.
I mean, it's not like they made it into and since the civilization has the real characteristics of an occasional kidnapping, and the fact that I guess they kidnap men from the surface to procreate and then send them back up and occasionally torture them, they do say they bring pain or pleasure,
that is a woman's function.
It's like Pinhead. Some say I bring you pain, like Planet of the Xenobites.
Exactly.
But much dumber. But no, but the fact is they take nothing. I mean, they introduce an advanced society, and there's all this technology that they literally could have teaches McCoy how to perform flawless brain surgery.
Yeah. Which
I guess also kind of knows because he walks him through it at the end when McCoy begins to lose it. They put all that flop sweat on him, and he's and again, DeForest Kelley, total pro, delivers all the lines. And his little breakdown makes sense because it sells because he's a good actor.
Yeah.
And he's selling some dopey lines. So when he's talking about how many different millions upon millions of connections he has to make, he's about to get the panics, and you can see he's going to lose it, and Spock's going to be talking backwards if he does it wrong. And Spock, but then all of a sudden Spock's like, okay, you've reconnected my mouth or my vocal system, so I can talk you through the rest. Does Spock keep all the information he gained from moving on there?
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense. And going back a step or two, so at one point they give the woman back her hyper intelligence by using the learning machine on her to try and convince her to do the surgery, which she refuses. Yeah. Which one of those things where it's that's actually one of the few logical moves made in the entire episode. And where she's like, no, I'm not helping you. Go die on a fire.
Go die on a fire.
And Kirk's like, all right, Bones, you're up. And she pulls a phaser and it's like, no, you're not. And the bold move that Scotty pulls off is he pretends to, I don't know, it's does he faint? Does he rip ass? Is he does he just he basically just like leans over and grunts, and she's suddenly distracted, and Kirk like slaps the phaser out of her hand. Crisis resolved. But apparently, like the whole time, Scotty is standing like uncomfortably close to both of them. It's one of those things where
the blocking on the episode is a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 3 inches from Scotty in that phaser, and like he's looking at it, he's like set to kill. I can see it.
Yeah,
like I could read the exact readings on this phaser because I'm literally leaning over it. It's like everything. It somehow it works, and then they give like DeForest Kelley like the brain treatment. They get Spock out of it, and like the not taking technology doesn't make sense because, okay, clearly someone can survive it. Give it to Scotty, and have him focus on moving the technology to the Enterprise or stealing the engine tech, like something, like just that little bit, and like have him write it down, because as like this, you know, the new tricks Scotty established, like he looks at a equation and he learns it. Like apparently Scotty can just like scribble shit down and be fine. But Kirk's like, no man, screw the civilization. We're gonna let this entire civilization collapse, despite the fact that Spock was like running all of like their water heaters, like the piping, which, you know, Spock being the core of a smart city is kind of a funny concept. Like the trains and traffic lights all function perfectly for the duration of like Spock's tenure.
They would, honestly. Spock is the head of a smart city. That would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it totally makes sense that Spock would be the one to be in there, but at the same time, it's like so many parts of this episode, like they go to great lengths to explain or like walk you through something, but the things you actually care about to make the episode work, they're just like, go away. Like that doesn't matter. And everyone's
it's like it's the blueprint of a regular decent episode of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when they're constructing it, they use parts provided by a man who only speaks like Esperanto and reads Esperanto. And it's William Shatner in the movie he did where he speaks in Esperanto.
Do you ever listen
to the universal language?
Do you ever listen to the podcast, How Did This Get Made?
Oh, always, yeah.
There was the episode where they're talking about the Avengers, and they like...
Oh, you mean
the screen
the Avengers of 1998 or whatever year it was?
With Sean Connery. And like they did a screen test, but they did it with an audience that didn't speak English and didn't bother to have any subtitles. And they're like, it's way too long, it doesn't make sense. Like, I kind of feel that's what happened here. They did something similar, and just like the random parts are thrown together. I mean, because you're right, the parts are there for a good episode, but it feels like they had the leftover bits from a whole bunch of other things, and they just tried to put it together, and it just didn't cohere. I mean, the concepts are cool, but holy shit, did it come up short.
Yeah, the idea of a civilization that needs an advanced brain to run its thing is neat in and of itself. Yeah. The concept of Spock's brain being stolen, even though it's goofy, you can make it work.
Yeah.
They just do anything to make it work. They basically, it's like, you know, it was this. It's like they just didn't care enough.
Yeah.
We have to bang this fucker out. It's like, what's your motivation? Who cares? They gave us a new season.
Yeah. It's like literally they gave Gene 45 minutes to finish an episode, and he's like, I really can. They're like, fine, don't worry about it. We'll fix it in post. It's fine. We got this. And they just like left in, like they have a scene where Chekhov and some dudes are hanging out on the surface, and they heat up a rock. Like,
heat up a rock.
Necessary? Do we need to see Chekhov like
hold
in his survival class?
It's such filler. I mean, like, you guys stay up there, and then you're right. You mentioned this to me in an email that they don't go back for Chekhov. They never. I mean, obviously, seeing as the last shot is them talking underground, you can assume that maybe they beamed up Chekhov and the rest, but they never tell them what happened. They never. There's no communication telling them things are better.
Yeah, there's like, given how incompetent everything in this episode is, like, I'm okay with the idea that they were just like, you know what, who knows where Chekhov is? We don't know where he is.
Yeah, I mean, considering,
behind by accident.
considering they know where they found the elevator, so they can go back down if they need to.
Yeah.
It's not like they're completely like. It's just.
And the thing is, Chekhov like touches the door, like he sees that it closes.
Yeah.
Like at that point,
Yeah.
go back to the Enterprise. There is no reason
Yeah,
to hang out there on the surface. But Chekhov.
Why are you hanging out in the cold planet where there's some weird guys who might kill you? Because you know.
But he's like, nah, man.
Who are also much taller than they are. They say that they never actually show them, but the implication is the men are taller than like they're like 7 feet or something like that because they make some crack about how you're not big enough to be whatever men are, whatever the word for men was. You know, it's weird because, and again, the reason why it's so shocking, because it's the director. I forgot the director's name. I looked at IMDb. He directed several Star Trek episodes. He knows how to make an episode. Like the writer is a guy who understands Star Trek. But he's, I looked at what Gene Kuntz had written. He didn't write any real classics, but he wrote good episodes. So it's not like he doesn't know how to write a good episode. And
I mean, he left with us.
And
like,
again, he was
big,
so
like the big legacy of Star Trek, which is the Prime Directive. Like, if anything,
Prime Directive.
even if you didn't hit a major episode, like that's the thing that gets name checked in every single piece of the series, whether it's books, it's movies, it's games, it's like whatever.
Yeah, they ignore it a lot, but they only ignore it after acknowledging it exists.
Yeah, like it's a consistent thing that like exists, and some captains, Janeway and Kirk, will periodically just be like, "Nah, man, nah, I'm out," and just abandon this thing.
Yeah, exactly, and and some are so tight-assed about it, Picard, that that he basically would give up, but to his credit, would like almost kill himself to avoid breaking the Prime Directive.
No.
Unless you're talking about insurrection, in which case, who needs a Prime Directive or anything else really?
Well, they were all turning into teenagers because of
that's right.
And again, another thing of like having random segues that didn't really factor into the plot. That movie was riddled with them. Like the whole scene.
Well, it's a Star Trek tradition.
It's like
it's a bad Star Trek tradition.
There we go.
It's not because good Star Trek tradition has a story that makes you want to. Maybe it's got a little action. It makes you think. It's got some goofy. It's got some good lines. Maybe it's goofy. Maybe it's not. But you came away feeling entertained. Bad Star Trek makes you, it is MST3K-ish, but it's also, you're frustrated because you know how good the show can be.
Yeah.
And I don't think Spock's brain is the worst hour of Star Trek ever produced, if you're like just saying from a quality perspective. But it is, as I said, the text of bad Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's when they take a half-baked idea, when they toss out all the previous characterization, when they really did, when they're clearly just trying to put an hour of television on screen because they need to put an hour of television on screen, and they just don't care, and that's why I think it's always been called the worst when people ask what's the worst episode of Star Trek. I mean, because it is like think of a bad, like you can think of tons of bad episodes, but at the top, what's the one that just exemplifies the worst qualities of all those episodes?
It's Spock's brain.
I mean,
because they just go. It has so many things where you look at it, you're like, you're so close. You're so close to having a decent episode, and then it just like goes to pieces. And the funny part is that like sometimes in Star Trek you get terrible acting, and like random cast members here are doing a good job, and then others are doing a horrible job. Like
this was not William Shatner's finest hour of television.
And
he doesn't perk out completely, but he's a little panicky and weird. And there is a great Kirk face moment when she's torturing them and he's trying to use the Spock remote control to basically get and again, this goes to what exactly the remote control does, because he's able not just to get Spock to move, he's able to get him to essentially function as a weapon to remove the pain device from this woman.
He does the wrist grab thing and then slaps.
Exactly. It's not. I mean, and they never explain it, but Shatner's face is like that pain's like. Argh. The other thing, I don't know. I mean,
come to think
when he turns it up to 11, sometimes it's great, but even an over-the-top Kirk is half-assed in this episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly like on the down slope of a hangover. Like, oh, I gotta go up.
It's like, what? Oh, okay. Scotty broke out the wrong nail last night. Aye.
The thing is, it's like, I love Jimmy Doohan, but like this is not
I do
his
too.
finest episode either because
No.
he's like,
No.
maybe they told him like, you really need to put out in this episode because we really want to make another Scotty episode. And he's like, all right, I will do it. And like,
Well, also, Spock's missing. They need someone else to kind of fill in that void to work with Kirk and McCoy.
yeah, and
The triumvirate.
and it did really work because he's just kind of like, yeah, there's some buildings over there.
Yeah.
And the other thing that
Scotty does better on the ship. He does not so good on away team.
Yeah.
Away missions.
it's true, and
There's a reason he spends most of the time in the engine room.
where Scots belong.
That's right. And only men belong.
That's
Because
true.
that's engineers.
There could be no engineers. There can be no women engineers. That's just totally unacceptable. Which, again, shame on Voyager for making B'Elanna Torres periodically appear incompetent because, like, I believe she was a good engineer. She kept a Maquis piece of garbage ship together for years. Like, that's
That's
probably
right.
some skill. But,
Yeah.
you know, the other thing that, like, this just occurred to me. So they keep saying that like Spock has the lower part of his brain that just manages like the anatomical functions of the body. Your pain nerves go through there, so maybe because like the rest of the brain wasn't there, Spock couldn't conceivably feel the pain. But if it activates,
No, you couldn't vocalize it or show it in any way, but he was in constant agony.
right? Like maybe that's exactly what it was. Spock's body was in constant pain from having this gaping hole in his head. He can't
He
verbalize.
couldn't vocalize. He couldn't do it. He couldn't tell anybody. It's like that. It's like the what Johnny got his gun. The Metallica used some of the scenes for the video for one. He's basically like SOS. Meanwhile, he's like Spock's fine. No,
No, Spock is in incredible suffering.
Spock's body is burning. Every motion,
Every moment is infinite agony.
every
Combined
moment I
pain.
exist is pain. Of course, seeing as he has no brain, he's not conscious. Could he really feel pain? The body can, but
Yeah, the thing is, again, if they are causing them pain and it's somehow nerve-based, your nerves have like basically like an electronic switch. So if they're firing off the nerves, shouldn't like your muscles spasm? Wouldn't Spock's muscles spasm anyway?
well, but another question: did they put a belt on Spock?
They did, but at the same time, like those belts, man, what the fuck?
I know, yeah.
Like,
There's a little button in the middle, and
which apparently is not actually the release button. The release button was apparently on the like underside, like a recessed button you had to like tap or something.
it didn't seem like it was that hard, though.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, they didn't seem like they were that tight either. So maybe if you just like put two thumbs in it and pulled the buckle away, you wouldn't experience the pain.
Well, I mean, Shatner and Doohan were looking a little chubby in that episode, so he probably couldn't have made it that tight.
Which again, like,
And also, speaking of, we're beating up on poor Jimmy Doohan here, but
true.
his hair in this episode.
that
I don't know what happened in makeup that morning, or what, like maybe someone got angry at him.
maybe they had just
It looks like
they had just come from filming that one episode where they go to the mob planet. And,
yeah, maybe that.
And like he just
Because
stole
his
the
hair
buckets of
is
hair.
like there's so much goop in his hair. Maybe some Grecian formula too. I don't know. It just isn't. I mean, and it only seems like it's this episode. He just looks off.
Yeah, like we mentioned it earlier. Like quarterbacks in the NFL will wear like those flak jackets with like the protective.
Yeah.
Like it kind of looks like Scotty's sporting one. So it's
Yeah.
either like he hurt himself in a bar fight and like has to protect his ribs, or he's wearing a girdle. Like it's one of the two.
Well, he might be wearing a girdle because we know Shatner was.
And we know that, you know, eventually Jimmy Doohan just kind of owned the fact that like he was putting on pounds.
It took him another decade though. Look at the motion picture. He's still. It took him until he really began to let it out in I guess in Star Trek 3, because even in 2 he's a little plumper, but he's not fat, or he's not letting it out completely.
I think it's 4 because that's the one
By
where
the time 4 comes around, he's like, whatever. I'm a roly-poly ball of.
he just rolls up the set and he's like, "Yeah, I'm basically gonna wear a vest the whole time." And the director's like, "No, you gotta go to
Can you
costume."
design me a space vest so I can?
I could just see the director being like, "No," like Spock, like Leonard Nimoy being like, "No, you have to put on the uniform." He's like, "Nah, man, vest to where it's
I'm
at."
just gonna wear this vest. Make it part of the uniform.
And
And by Star Trek 5, it's like, ugh.
Yeah, but again,
But no, yeah, no. But Jimmy Doohan, a guy who is a total badass too in reality.
yeah, like he's
Flew
amazing.
in, World War II fighter pilot, amazing badass. Not having his best day, a couple days on set, I guess, for Spock's brain.
And, the thing is, like, to me, I feel that, like, commenting on his performance simply because, like, this is the low point for Jimmy. Like, he's usually much higher. Like, it's like, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. Like, I expect more from you.
I expected more, Jimmy. I don't know what's going on.
It's like, you're so close. Like, come on, man. Come on. But it's like, this episode, it's frustrating. More than anything else, it is just frustrating.
Yeah.
You're kind of waiting for something interesting to happen after, like, an intro that's pretty cool, and then nothing really does. And it moves at a glacial pace to get there.
Glacial pace, yeah.
And at the end, they're just like, whoop, and it's done.
And it's done.
And there's so many questions left, like, did Kirk and, like, crew, like, literally just leave thousands of people to die because, like, they pissed off Kirk by harming Spock?
And all that technology.
Yeah.
And all that amazing technology.
Like, there's that one episode of Kirk getting court-martialed. Like, yeah, this is the time when he should be court-martialed. Like, literally, you sentenced thousands to die for one dude.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like...
And he was getting court-martialed for acts like maybe pushing the button too soon on this, like, maybe murder. Meanwhile, he's like, he's basically, it's like, you're going to go live on the inhospitable
surface.
Well, I don't know. We're going to keep coming back to that, but...
And even beyond that, it's like, it almost feels like... like, I had this thought the other day that, like, in Star Trek 2, they have the whole speech about how the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And like,
or the one.
Yeah, or the one. And Spock dies. It's kind of like, this is your punishment, Kirk. This is for leaving those people to die. Because, like...
Yeah. Well, that and, like, countless others, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean... Nothing about this episode.
Piece of the Action is a great episode. It's the mom one, but they leave a phaser behind, and and maybe because they left the phaser behind, they all nuked each other. We don't really know.
Which, like, I
think one of the novels implies that because they're such great copiers, they eventually caught up with the Federation. Like one of the innumerable Star Trek novels that exist.
God, people complain about like the extended universe in Star Wars, which eventually...
Oh man, that thing was orderly and well put together compared to...
Yeah.
I guess they just decided that nothing is canon except for what's on screen, which is great.
Yeah.
But
or authorized books. Like the authorized books give like additional context, but the thing is like they're no longer like Wedge Antilles saves the universe from the Star Killer. It's like, nah, this dude over here had like a spy mission that was slightly impacting the movies. Like, that's fine. Like, just do that. Star Trek, on the other hand, is like, nah, random bullshit is happening all over the place, and Lieutenant Who's the Fuck is like always the hero. It's just,
yeah, there are some good Star Trek novels. I mean, I haven't read one in a long time. I haven't read a Star Trek novel. No, I haven't read a Star Trek novel in a long time. But I used to read them a lot, and there was one where they actually did a. This could probably, there are bad book podcasts, but I can recommend about most of the Star Trek, or half the Star Trek literary canon, not canon, but non-canonical texts from any one of those bad book podcasts. But
the one book I did want to read that I never did was they followed up on the Next Generation episode where like Kelsey Grammer appears, and apparently like after the
Enterprise, they did like 3 of those, I think.
They did like the follow-up to where like, oh yeah, the Enterprise E has just been finished building, and Kelsey Grammer steals it to go wage a personal war on the Klingons, and it's like, what? Yeah. Like, I should have read that book because it sounds batshit.
TGIF, thank God I'm free. Actually, Kelsey. Yeah, it's funny that the Kelsey. We shouldn't. We're getting way off the next TOS here. We're definitely off course on this. Now there are other things that you notice in a bad So what else do we have? Wait, actually, basically, we're gonna have to cut this at some point.
Oh yeah. I'm watching the clock. The thing is, it's like there's so much of this episode that like falls into things like characters totally acting out of place. Like,
yeah.
we talked about the category of put a goatee on this guy.
Slap a goatee on him, yeah.
Like, this is exactly it, because Kirk is like, all of a sudden, like, no, the mission takes the back seat. I got some revenge to dish out.
That's right.
And Scotty's just kind of like, yeah, I'm here. And Chekhov is suddenly like a wilderness survival expert, eating up rocks all over the place.
If he had said something like, "Did you know the Boy Scouts were started in Russia?" I learned that would be funny and in character for Chekhov. He just kind of sits there and literally he's like, "Here, I'm going to warm up a rock," and they sit there.
Yeah, like
nobody cares. No one cared.
If they had to return to Kirk, Spock, and McCoy had to return to the surface and come out, I almost would have expected Chekhov to have like heated up the rock again, but have like a pot of like goulash or borscht like ready to go. Like, I know that's neither one is truly Russian, but still, like, I mean, stick with the stereotyping, Star Trek. Like, just
I know, yeah.
Through. I mean, that's
a lot of the Trek no babble. It's just all over the place.
There's not even an overarching message either. Like,
no, there's nothing. There's like basically it's like here's some stuff that happened.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you get an episode we're going to cover in a little bit. Is, let this be your last battlefield. Like, that's one of those ones where Gene Roddenberry decided, like, he is going to take a 2x4 to the audience and beat you with this lesson until you are dead. Like, everybody is going.
And you're not racist anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
so you're both dead and not racist, or not racist, whichever happens first.
He doesn't really care. You're going to get the message.
Yeah.
I mean, well, we're up to about 40 odd minutes now, so I mean, both of us agree this is a bad Trek episode, but not for it's a train wreck of various bad aspects of Trek. Like, it is the epitome of how Trek can go wrong.
Yeah, it's not a bad initial idea. It's not like certain things where you'll see in other bad episodes we'll cover where everything was a bad idea from the get-go.
Yeah,
including possibly the series. Voyager. I'm going to say this right at the top. I am not a fan of Star Trek Voyager.
Neither am I, but I will say this.
They do have good episodes.
I wasn't even going to go there. The intro, their theme song, I actually really liked it. And you know what? Of the post-TOS series, I might like it the best, and I will fight a bitch.
No, you might be right. Because TNG just uses the motion picture, so that's fine, but it's not really unique to the series. Deep Space Nine's never worked for me.
Yeah. I mean,
the intro sucks, too, for Deep Space Nine. Also, the intro for not just the music for Voyager, but the entire opening credit sequence is probably some of the best they ever did.
Yeah. I mean, it perfectly captures the series.
It's gorgeous. It makes the ship look great. There's some great music. It's Jerry Goldsmith did it. He's back. He's writing Star Trek. He did a fantastic job for that thing. If only they paid as much attention to the rest of the show.
Anything else on that show. And the thing is, there are good actors on Voyager. I rip on Chakotay so much, but the actor who played him, not that bad. It's just
also not really a Native American.
Not even close. And the guy who did advise on Native American issues, total fraud.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reason I'm bringing up Voyager is that our next episode is Threshold, which is the lizard.
Which many people will say is the worst the worst hour of Star Trek related things ever produced.
I mean, it doesn't have my favorite Voyager line, which is Janeway in the middle of a phaser fight with Cass going, "None of this makes sense," which I feel applies to the whole Voyager experience.
That's Voyager's. That's their thesis statement. I don't remember that episode. I can talk more about Voyager when we get to the Voyager episode.
Yeah.
And my weird relationship with watching it, and how maybe when you get to college you don't like Star Trek as much anymore. Voyager is definitely not going to keep you watching.
It's true. If you're watching through the series in order,
I could go to a party, or I could watch Voyager.
We all make poor life decisions, Patrick.
Yeah, no, I didn't watch Voyager.
Oh, man.
But then I caught up with it later in reruns, and
you made the correct decision because no one missed out on not watching that show.
No. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway, so we've got a bad episode of Star Trek.
And the thing is,
Sort of the Spock's brain.
The thing is, I wouldn't actually recommend against people watching it. I just wouldn't say they start with it. Like maybe like once you have a little taste for it, then go to Spock's brain.
Like for me, unlike the movies and unlike other things, I think the original series is probably best if you watch it beginning to end.
Yeah, I agree.
Same with Next Generation. Because watch, I mean, actually all of them really, because after Next Generation, ongoing storylines became a big key part of Star Trek. But really, if you're watching the first 2 episodes of Star Trek, let's say your first episode is Spock's brain, and then you go and you watch Where No Man Has Gone Before, you'd be like, what the hell?
These are the same show.
Right?
Or, like,
I think if you do it in order, you can see I recommend people watch Star Trek all the time. I mean, if you're going to start with an episode, maybe I always recommend is a good episode of Star Trek. One of my favorites is I almost said Turnabout Intruder, but that's not true.
We will get
no,
there.
it's Balance of Terror.
Yeah,
because that's the one where he marries into some Romulans. It's essentially written as a World War II submarine movie, and it's incredibly well acted on all sides. It's well shot. It's shot like a film more than it is like television. Yeah. It was one of the earlier episodes, but it really sets up a lot of what you know about Star Trek. Even though it's essentially, I guess you'd call it a bottle episode. It's not a bottle episode, but it sets up more of the crew. I mean, a lot of things happen in that episode that they don't really carry through. Like, for instance, there's an actual phaser bay crew that fires phasers in that episode, whereas in future episodes, there was just Sulu or Chekhov punching a button.
Yeah.
But that was because, he's in fire control, right? It's the very... but as you see the show evolve. Whereas I think if you try to jump between seasons, if you're just watching Star Trek for the first time, you're just going to end up confused.
Yeah, and I think a certain way that like TNG may not have started out on the best foot by like going straight to Q, because that was just a wee bit trippy. Like
it was
because it's like, is this like a common villain that we're going to encounter? Which unfortunately, early in the seasons, yes. Like, there are some profound...
Not a fan of Q?
Q, when used correctly, was fun. But there were certain episodes, like the one where, like, he gives Riker all of his powers for a little bit. You're just like, what? There are just some Q episodes that don't work.
I would argue that Q only gets good when he introduces the Borg.
Yeah.
The first season Q, even though I think John DeLance is great in the role, like, they clearly decided to go in a different direction after the first few episodes he did, and DeLance plays it well. He plays Q as more a trickster. In the first 2 episodes, he's very... I mean, there's a funny edge to him, but he's also cruel.
Yeah.
It's a cruelty that kind of is a bit worn off, even in the episode where they find the Borg, which is 2nd season.
I think so. I mean, he goes from, like, being Loki, who clearly is, like, trickster but motivated by evil, to, like, Mr. Mixoplex from Superman.
Yeah,
It's kind of like a dopey little clown that does things to have fun. Like, it's a little bit more digestible.
Yeah, until he's ruined completely by Voyager.
We will go there.
All right. So this has been Bad Star Trek. And once again, the man who wrote our theme music, or performed our theme music,
and
Captain Meatshield.
Again, thank you, Captain Meatshield.
Thank you,
Captain
Meatshield.
We will play a little bit as our outro as well.
Yeah.
So
we'll be back hopefully soon with an episode that might be better. I don't know. We'll see how this one turns out.
Spoiler alert, the answer is no. Threshold is garbage.
That's true. The episode is garbage, but maybe our episode well, we'll see how the podcast goes. We're just getting started, folks. Give us a break.
We don't know what we're doing, and that's going to be a common theme. All right. See you soon, Patrick.
Live long and prosper, as they say.